Have you ever stopped to think about what's really running the show when it comes to our reproductive health? Well, it's not random. It's actually a super precise chain of command. Think of it as a constant, high-stakes conversation happening inside our bodies every single second. And today, we're going to crack that code. So let's dive right in. To get our heads around this, we're going to use a simple but really powerful analogy. Let's imagine your endocrine system is basically a hormonal mission control. And here are the key players in our mission control. At the very top, you've got the commander. That's the hypothalamus. It's the big boss, issuing these high-level orders using a hormone called GnRH. That order then trickles down to the manager, the pituitary gland. Its job is to translate those broad orders into specific instructions, which are LH and FSH. And finally, those instructions reach the workers down on the factory floor, the ovaries or testes, who are responsible for actually carrying out the tasks. Simple, right? Now, let's see how this mission control model works in the male system. And honestly, it's a pretty clear-cut, straightforward chain of command. The commander gives the order, and the manager, that's the pituitary, sends out two very clear instructions. First, it uses LH to tell one set of workers, the Leydig cells in the testes, hey, make testosterone. And second, it uses FSH to tell the other workers, the Sertoli cells. All right, team, let's get going on sperm production. It's a pretty stable, continuous operation, just chugging along. But you know, what happens when things go wrong? Well, it usually comes down to one of two things. You can either have a worker problem, where the testes themselves just aren't doing their job. We call that primary hypogonadism. Or you can have a manager problem, where the pituitary isn't sending out the right signals to begin with, and that's known as secondary hypogonadism. So how do we tell them apart? This is where it gets really clever. In both cases, testosterone, the final product, is going to be low, so that doesn't help us. The real clue is in what the manager is doing. If it's a worker problem, the pituitary manager sees that output is low and starts shouting. It's just pumping out crazy high levels of LH and FSH, trying to get the workers to listen. But if it's a manager problem, well, then you just hear silence. LH and FSH are low or maybe just weirdly normal because the manager isn't even sending the signal in the first place. Okay, now let's switch gears and look at the female blueprint. And whoa, if the male system was a steady operation, this is a whole different ballgame. We're talking about a vastly more complex monthly mission. It's this intricate, cyclical process that completely resets itself every single month, with hormone levels going on a wild roller coaster ride to prepare for a potential pregnancy. To understand this monthly mission, we have to talk about a critical concept, the ovarian reserve. And sticking with our analogy, this is pretty simple. It's just the size of your available workforce, the number of eggs or primordial follicles that mission control has ready to go at any one time. And when things kick off around puberty, that workforce is huge. I mean, we're talking about roughly 400,000 primordial follicles in the ovaries, all just waiting to be called up for duty. But here's the catch. Unlike the male system, this workforce doesn't get new hires. Over decades of monthly cycles, that number just plummets. By the time menopause rolls around, there are fewer than 1,000 follicles left, which basically signals the planned retirement and shutdown of the whole operation. So, you might be wondering, how does mission control keep track of its dwindling workforce? Well, it has this fantastic little tool called anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH. It's actually produced by the follicles themselves, so the amount of it in your blood gives a really direct estimate of your ovarian reserve. It's like mission control's official egg counter. And the brilliant thing is, it stays pretty stable throughout the menstrual cycle, which makes it super reliable. But with all this complexity in the female system, it's no surprise that sometimes the signals get crossed. The messages from management can get totally jumbled, and that can lead to some real operational chaos down on the ground floor. And a classic example of this is polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. What's happening here is the problem actually starts way up at the top. The commander, the hypothalamus, starts sending out orders way too frequently. This rapid-fire signaling confuses the pituitary manager, and it starts favoring one instruction, LH, way more than its partner, FSH. And that leads us to the absolute key diagnostic clue for PCOS, a skewed LH to FSH ratio. Normally, these two hormones work together, they're a team. But in PCOS, the LH level is often at least double, sometimes triple that of FSH. It's literally like one manager is shouting instructions, completely drowning out its partner. And that leads to all sorts of problems, like disordered follicle development and too much androgen production. Okay, theory time is over. Let's put this all into practice. It's time to put on our detective hats because we're going to solve 3 diagnostic puzzles using the exact principles and real lab data we've been talking about. All right, puzzle number 1. We've got a 24-year-old man. He comes in with some classic symptoms of low androgens. His libido's gone, he's impotent, and he says he barely even needs to shave anymore. Right away, our alarm bells are ringing. This sounds like a hormone problem. So let's look at the evidence. First up, the worker output. His testosterone is at 7. The normal range is 9 to 38, so yeah, that's low. That confirms hypogonadism. Now let's listen to the managers. What are they doing? Whoa, LH is at 26 and FSH is at 30. Both are way, way higher than their normal ranges. The verdict here is crystal clear. The managers are screaming at the top of their lungs, but the workers are just not responding. This is a textbook case of primary hypogonadism. It's a worker problem, plain and simple. Okay, on to our second case. This is a 35-year-old woman. Her periods have become really infrequent, she's having a hard time getting pregnant, and she has some mild hirsutism. That's excess hair growth, which is a big sign of high androgens. All right, let's check the labs. Her estradiol is low, which confirms hypogonadism. So now we look upstairs to the managers to figure out why. Her FSH is normal, sitting there at 3, but look at her LH. It's at 20. That's way above the normal range. This gives us a really skewed LH to FSH ratio of almost 7 to 1. That is not normal. And bam, that is the classic signature of PCOS. You've got one manager shouting while the other one is just talking at a normal volume. That distorted, disproportionate signal is the very definition of the chaotic management that we see in polycystic ovary syndrome. And for our final puzzle, we have a 22-year-old woman. She has a history of anorexia nervosa, and her periods have stopped completely. That's a condition we call amenorrhea. So we start at the bottom again. Her estradiol is very low. But unlike our first case, where the managers were shouting their heads off, this time it's just quiet. They're completely silent. Both LH and FSH are super low. They are not responding at all to the low estradiol by increasing their signal. So what does this tell us? This is not a worker problem. The issue is coming from higher up the chain of command. The low LH and FSH tell us it's a secondary or manager problem. But given her history of anorexia nervosa, which can literally shut the whole system down from the very top, it's most likely a tertiary problem. That means the issue starts all the way up with the commander, the hypothalamus. You see, in the end, understanding all of this isn't just about memorizing pathways from a textbook. It's really about learning how to interpret this incredibly complex and honestly elegant conversation that's always happening inside of us. By learning to listen to the signals, the shouting, the silence, the crossed wires, we can actually decode what our bodies are trying to tell us. So the real question is, are you listening?